All right, excellent. We're going to go ahead and get started. We've got a kind of a 30-minute structured webinar prepared for you. This is going to be kind of a new AVAIL Spotlight webinar series that Customer Success is going to be hosting over the next several months. We're going to kind of till the end of the year and onwards to really kind of focus on a specific feature or maybe a collection of features that service you all, our end users, our customers, and future customers. And so this spotlight specifically is going to be revolved on palettes. We're going to be talking about what they are, kind of reviewing some use cases and actually demoing the functionality as well. Before we get started, I want to introduce myself. My name is Clay Watson. I'm the Director of Customer Success at AVAIL. I've also brought on Rob Snyder. He's our kind of a new Customer Success Manager to the team. So we're going to be taking part. I'm going to be leading us through the majority of the webinar. And then I'm going to have a block of time for Rob to kind of jump in and provide some insight as well. For the agenda, just kind of give you a breakdown of what we're going to cover for this webinar. We've got some quick reminders that we'll go over just about AVAIL in general. We're going to be talking about kind of understanding the why behind palettes. So it's a new feature. We love to kind of tell the story of what we were thinking about, what kind of feedback we were receiving when developing this feature, and really kind of any other feature that we put into the platform. So we're going to be spending some time talking about that, some of the reasoning behind it. We're going to cover some of the fundamentals and key concepts that you'll want to understand as you're kind of using palettes, just to kind of understand, the different workflows that you can add this to. Then we're going to dive into the demo, get into the nitty-gritty, kind of show you how to create a palette, all the nuances there. Also kind of cover some examples and use cases that may be relevant to your specific workflow or for your team. We're also going to look at kind of some of the numbers, the analytics that you can see through palettes. So that is something that we have added to our analytics dashboard. And so we're going to review exactly what that looks like, what admins can kind of see from that analytics view. And then we're going to talk about next steps. So the takeaways from this webinar, what you can do within your own team, and kind of what we're kind of looking for from you at the end of the webinar. So going to those quick reminders, we want to mention some of these are pretty fresh. You may have seen the communication, I think, that went out last week. We've got new versions of the AVAIL desktop and add-ons available. So we've got the desktop version 5.05, AVAIL for Revit 5.3.3, and AVAIL Harvest 2.4.4. So we definitely encourage everyone, when possible, to get those latest versions and be using the latest versions of each of those products. All right, excellent. So let's dive into understanding the why behind palettes. And so palettes were kind of originally designed to solve a common scenario. So we heard from a few different firms, they've got project managers, they've got, maybe even a principal or someone who kind of needs some access to the content that you've got in your library. In this example, we heard from a specific firm, they've got a project manager. They want to export drafting views for markup, but they don't have access to Revit. They may not need access to Revit. They may not have a license. And so palettes were designed to be able to share that with another user with that specific type and that specific role, and so that they could utilize the resources that you've got in your library, and without having to need Revit for the markup that they needed to. So building from that scenario, palettes became a solution that offered, several different kind of efficiencies to people's workflow. So you can tie useful project materials. You can eliminate outside noise for the team. So one of those is if you're kind of thinking of, thinking about that project manager view, right? If they're brand new to AVAIL, maybe they haven't been using AVAIL, they don't have Revit, so they're not in there every day in the nitty gritty. If they jump into AVAIL and they see all the channels and everything that they could see, it's going to be a little overwhelming. It might be too much, and it's not going to give them the experience that they need to just grab the drafting views and then get them out for markup. So palettes is a way to kind of isolate, create kind of a subset list of content that's a really focused way to collaborate and share those items, and then they can just take it and use it and have that access that's really focused. And then you can kind of accelerate projects through the documentation phase. So as you're kind of working within your teams, palettes are really, really designed for that end user. So it's a big kind of component that we'll be talking about in a second. And this kind of entire webinar and demo is really going to be from the user, the end user perspective, because this is a feature that's really aimed to benefit that workflow. So talking about the fundamentals and key concepts that we definitely want to, review, and we'll bring these up as we go through the demo as well. Is that so the first and foremost is palettes can be created by any user type. So this is the kind of the first time that we've kind of opened up this kind of functionality and these features to the end users, and that's what we call consumers with AVAIL. Publishers are able to create their own palettes as well. But again, it is very focused. Palettes are focused on that end user consumer experience, so they can kind of create some efficiencies and pull things together how they see or kind of curate exactly what they want to see in a palette. So when you are sharing a palette, that is an option. As soon as you create it, you can share it with anybody on your plan. It automatically grants editing privileges when you're sharing it. So again, the concept is collaboration, teamwork, getting people together, looking at a specific palette, and be able to edit that. So you don't have to run into issues where someone can only view it and they can't make changes or add something to that palette. It's very collaborative. We wanted to keep that open, keep those workflows open between colleagues or different teams. One thing to kind of keep in note, so we did open up those editing privileges, so when you share a palette, that person that you shared it with can delete that palette. But we want to also kind of create some guardrails around that. So the channel permissions, they still govern that access to content on a palette. So if you've shared out a palette and you've got content or resources on there that user doesn't originally have access to from the channel level, they're not going to be able to access that. So that's something to kind of keep in mind as you're sharing those out. Make sure you're kind of sharing that with somebody that have access to the same channels, because they'll see a little pop-up in AVAIL that denies that access. And also deleting, this is a very important point, deleting content from palette does not affect the source content. So this is really, and we'll kind of go through this in the demo, you're just copying the content from a channel that you've got access to and adding it to a palette. You're not going to be affecting that source content. If you delete it from a palette, it's not deleting the source content. So it's it's still kind of controlled in a way to where you can really kind of do no harm with your palettes as you're adding them, as you're deleting them, as you're sharing them. You're not going to be affecting the library. And so that's really important to understand, is that it's still that source content. It's still just as it should be. And then this palette kind of opens up and allows for this collaboration and sharing, but you've still got a lock on your library and how it's set up. All right, cool. So I'm going to switch my screen. We're going to jump into the demo. Let me share this. All right, cool. So when you first get into AVAIL, and you can see AVAIL, right, Rob, on your end? I just want to make sure I'm sharing.
We were seeing it.
Okay. All right, perfect. So I've got AVAIL open. You can see, we've got this kind of a demo environment that we've got set up. These are all the different channels. So you'll probably have already seen this palettes icon, the palettes menu available on the left panel. And this is where I've got a few different palettes set up. So the first thing we're going to go is we're going to kind of go through this entire page layout and all the different kind of ins and outs and things that you can do on this page. So there's several different ways that you can view a palette or open a palette. So we definitely want to touch on that as well. So if you're in here brand new, this page is probably going to be blank. So the first thing you'll want to do is create a palette. And so you can go in here. I've got a few of these that got like a project number. So palettes can be, if you're working on specific projects, you want to match it up and how you kind of want to work with those resources, then you can. Or you can kind of create your separate Lions building. I'm going to create that palette. And that's kind of your starting point, right? You've got that set up. And so the next step is to add your content to that palette. If you kind of get to a stage where you've got multiple on here, maybe kind of a full page of palettes, we do have some options to sort your palettes and a kind of a different view. So similar to what you would see in your channel layout, you can change kind of this grid layout to a list. So sometimes that's better to kind of visually see if you've got a lot of palettes and you're working with all the different team members, then you can kind of change that view a little bit. You can switch it back to the grid if you need to as well. You've also got kind of a created by, me, not me, anyone sorting, as well as by the name, author and created, date created. So a couple of different sorting options on that main palettes page as well. When you're looking at the palette, this one, if I click on this little icon, it's going to open in a new window. So that's a really useful stage there that this is going to be empty, but this is great to bring it out into a new window. So that kind of helps with some of the workflow as well, because you do have a drag and drop capability from the palette. So this is a great way, once you've got it created, you can set up this window, and now you can just go to your channel. You can grab what you need and just drag it and drop it onto a palette. You can also go, this is going to open up your sharing options as well. So you can go up here. If I wanted to share this one with Rob, now maybe we're working on it together, we can click there and add him to that palette. And again, now that I've shared that with Rob, when he goes to his palettes page, it's going to show up for him, and he's got those editing privileges as well. So he can open it up in this same window. He can grab content from channels as well, and he can delete the palette if need to as well. All right, cool. So we've kind of talked about some of the capabilities of just kind of opening that palette. If you right click on the palette, you also have some options to share, open in a new window like we had just seen. You can edit the palette details if you wanted to go in, change the name, change the description. You do have that ability to do that from the right click. And then you can also delete the palette from the right click as well. Besides opening it in a new window, you can open it up directly in the AVAIL page as well. And so this is one that I've got a bunch of panel details loaded into. You're going to see some of the same sharing options, grid versus list view from that main palettes page. And then you've got those, edit details and open as well. All right, great. So one of the kind of use cases that we're going to be talking about here is, or kind of what we already mentioned, right? That kind of original story that we use to kind of build palettes and create that feature is really around maybe kind of getting those drafting views together for a project manager, maybe yourself or another like non-Revit user, so they can export. So this is like a really great feature that we've added into palettes, is the ability to kind of take those, collect those items together, and then export them as a PDF. And so we're going to go through an example of that here. If we go into my West Main storefront, I've got a couple of drafting views loaded here. And so whenever you open that main palettes page, you're going to see this left icon or this right icon that says PDF Exporter. And so this is going to open up a panel that you can see. And then as you kind of navigate and select the specific details, you can select 1, 2, use the control and select more than one, or you can control A and select all, and you can add them all to the same page. So you can add additional pages if you had a lot more to add to your kind of PDF export. And then once you go to your export feature, you've got that PDF, PNG, or JPEG option to export. So we'll kind of go through this. This is my storefront details. So it's going to save that page for me. And it's going to give me that once it's been saved, and you can open it directly from this window as well. All right, great. So that's kind of the first example, talking about, again, collecting these kind of drafting views to use that PDF exporter and get them out for markup, redlining, and things like that. Another example is kind of looking at a palette as a shopping cart. So maybe you're kind of jumping between channels, kind of pulling things together that you need to load into Revit, right? So this is kind of switching that for your end users that do have Revit access. They're in there every day. They're always kind of collecting these materials to get loaded in. And so if we look here, I've got a bunch actually added to this Oakhurst Town Hall view, but maybe I want to add more. I'm going to go back to my library, right? It's kind of a work in progress. I need to get some more things added in here. So I'm going to jump over and look at kind of what else I need to get added in. I'm going to grab a couple of detail items. Let's do. I'm going to grab a couple of these. Again, you can control and click on multi items. You can add them all to a palette. This is another window that you can create a palette. So if you were in here fresh, you hadn't actually created that palette to begin with, you can just start from your channel. You can create the palette right here and then add your content kind of all in the same go. So I've already got my palette set up. I'm going to click on that. I'm going to copy that over. Again, that's copying it. This source content is going to stay as is. It's going to be just as is. If it gets updated, the items in the palettes will also be updated as well. So always keep in mind that source content is still the source of truth for the palette content. So I've got a couple of items there. I've added them in. If I wanted to hop back over to my palette, I've got them loaded here, which looks great. And if I've got Revit open, and I've got my project navigator. So I've got my project navigator dock beside my Revit browser. If I've got that selected, I can actually go in here. You can select one, and that's fine. You can do that. But you can also do a Control A. You can select all of them at once and give Project Navigator a second, because there's a lot in here. It's 21, and bam, I've got them all loaded up, ready to go, and just I can load them directly from the Project Navigator interface. So again, kind of expediting a lot of that, collecting it all, kind of thinking about that shopping cart experience as you're kind of going through channels, grabbing what you need for that project into your palette. Control A to select all, and then you can use that Project Navigator to kind of easily load all of those things in one kind of steady workflow. So speaking about kind of the end user experience, again, is one thing I want to note is for hosting cloud content, right? So just one thing to kind of point out, if you do have hosting cloud content, you can still add that content without having to download it first from to a palette. So here I've got an example, and I'll actually show you another one. If I go into this cloud channel, we're going to add a piece of casework here. So these are all cloud hosted. I'm going to add this to my palette. So I didn't have to download it first. It's just going to load it. It's going to copy it over to that palette. But one thing to keep in mind is that once you do go in and select it, you do have to download it in order to select it and bring it into your project. So just one thing to keep in mind, you can still get those things downloaded and then Control A to load them up into your project. And there they are there. I'll show up right away. All right, cool. I'm going to turn it over to Rob. So Rob's going to take over. He's going to talk about a specific palette that he created, and just kind of expanding on another use case. Because again, palettes are really kind of aimed to kind of empower the end users and the consumers within AVAIL and help them collaborate and share ideas as well. So I'm going to turn over to Rob. He's going to talk about the palette that he's set up and that he's shared with me, and kind of talk about his use case.
Yes, I have to share my screen. Let's see. Thanks, Clay.
Yeah,
Okay, here's a palette. I mean, two palettes, the one you just sent me and the one that I sent you earlier. It's
right.
called Early Sketch. You can see that, right?
Yes. Good.
So if I open that, we were just pretending that Clay and I work at an architecture firm, not at AVAIL, and that we're designing a project. And we were on a coffee break yesterday, and we were chatting about this little area in the project we're working on with this pilaster. And I just I think of it. I think of the palette as like a post-it note, similar to a post-it note. So from our conversation around the coffee, we were just sharing some ideas about, you know, some materials to use and some details related to this pilaster condition. And so I could have, jotted some notes down on a post-it note and handed that to Clay. But this is kind of like that, but it's just uh, unlike a post-it note, you can't drag things off the post-it note into your Revit project. But this one with the palettes, you can do that. So, we had a family. I put in the palette this family with this standard pilaster and some a plan detail and something about the panel system here in section and some materials that we were discussing. There's also a PDF document about the panel system. So it was just a way to kind of hand that off. And then, these are not permanent collections. They're just kind of reminders to keep things moving. And just like with a post-it note, when this one, I had a post-it note yesterday to make us a demonstration palette, which is what this is. So good thing I had this reminder. But now that I've done it, I can get rid of it and throw it away. It's not a permanent container. It's just to help. That was kind of the story.
No, that's great. Thank you for
Yeah.
that, Rob. Yeah, exactly. That's a great point. Yeah, palettes are very temporal. You kind of once you're done with them, you can delete them, you can toss them, you can create a new one, and just kind of continue that workflow. But it's not really designed to be another library. It's just kind of a temporal space where you can kind of pull things together quickly and share them and collaborate with other users.
Okay. I'll stop sharing.
Cool. Yeah. I'm gonna switch back over. One thing I did forget to point out, just to share with you all again. So when you are in your palette, one thing I forgot to mention is that if you open it up either from this page or if you open it up in a new window, um, let me just open up a new window here. Once you select a piece of content, maybe somebody shared that content with you, right? Or shared the palette with you, and you jump in there, and you're like, "Oh, this is great. This is awesome. Where did it come from?" Right? Where is? How do I go to that channel and maybe add more content or see what else is there? And so one thing to kind of point out is at the very bottom of your palette window, as you select these pieces of content, it is going to show you the channel that is sourced out of. And you also have an option to jump to that channel in AVAIL. So right here, I clicked on this Revit 2024 library. It's going to jump right over in the AVAIL interface to where I need to go. So if I'm kind of need to pull in some additional details or drafting views or anything like that, you can jump from your palette to that source channel and add content as needed there. Just one last kind of little feature that's included in the palette functionality. All right, cool. So I'm going to turn the attention. So next, we've kind of talked about the ins and outs, the kind of mechanics of the palette, of how to create them. One thing that I did want to also note are the analytics side of kind of viewing some of the palette activity. And so let me share my screen here. You've got a lot of different access to a lot of different metrics that you can see from your palette activity. So this is for enterprise customers. You do have kind of access to our analytics dashboard. And so this is where admins can go in, they can monitor palettes adoption, usage, and trends across a pretty large variety of different actions. So as you're adding content, deleting, downloading, sharing, you can see that from your analytics dashboard. And so if I share what that looks like, this is again from our demo account. So once you get logged in, You've got a variety of different tabs through that analytics dashboard. And then we've got one reserved for this palette activity. So again, you're going to find kind of all of your users that have interacted with palettes. You're going to see kind of the palette's names. Some of the palette actions will align with the palette name or the specific content that was interacted with. So you'll see like that they previewed some content, they added some content, created a palette. Those kind of things will show up. It's going to give you some bigger numbers, kind of look at big picture trends that might be happening month to month. It's going to break down a lot of those things. So if you did want to look at a specific user, you could do that. You could highlight it. And actually, let me refresh this really quick. This might have stalled out on me. 1 second. All right, cool. So we jump in there again, refresh it. I can go back in here, look at specific users. If I wanted to look at, who is specifically adding content, who is downloading content, you can see that from this analytics page. All right, excellent. All right, we're gonna hop back over to the slides. And so this is kind of what's next, right? So we've talked about palettes, we talked about the mechanics, we talked about our story, the understanding the why. And so these are kind of your next steps, is kind of what we empower you all to help us gather feedback, is kind of really kind of the end result here. So what we encourage is we introduce your palettes to your team. Start creating a palette, share it with others, get their feedback, encourage other team members to create their own content collections as well, and experiment with different ways of using palettes. We've kind of opened this up as a feature for end users. And so it's a way that they kind of build their own best practices around how they want to share things or collaborate with different team members on different projects. And then we want to make sure that you're gathering that feedback and ultimately sharing it with us. Share your feedback, send your questions to support@getavail.com. Myself and Rob are monitoring that help desk. We're happy to answer questions. We're genuinely eager to understand how you are using it, how it's affecting you, and how we can kind of continue to build on this functionality for end users as we kind of continue through our roadmap and development pipeline. So right here, we're 2 minutes under the 30-minute timeline, which is right on the money. So I want to thank everyone who attended the webinar today. Again, if you do have those questions, send them to support@getavail.com. And we hope to hear from you and gather your feedback. We'll be sending out an additional message, kind of following up on this webinar, kind of recapping and making sure everyone shares the video as well. But they'll also have a feedback survey. So as you're starting to use that, use palettes, get an understanding of how it's going to work for your team. We'd love to kind of hear from you. So we do have that link that'll be included in the message that you'll see kind of later this week as it goes out. As far as kind of a tease for next, so we're going to be lining up a few more of these kind of spotlight webinars over the next few months. So we've got some things around some AVAIL kind of content management tools that we're going to be coming up that makes things a lot easier to kind of manage tags and audit your channels and things like that. We're also going to be talking about related content, which might be a new and mysterious feature to some of you who are kind of new to AVAIL and want to understand what that means and how to kind of use related content to your advantage. So we're going to be focusing on that as well. And we'll have another one actually coming up around that Project Navigator interface as well. So kind of keep that in mind. We'll have dates sent out and invites sent out on some of those topics, but something that you can kind of expect to see from us going forward. So thank you again for everyone who attended, and we hope to hear from you soon.